Welcome back to Hacker Hangouts on a Saturday morning, and we are live streaming, and we have a bunch of topics which I think we're planning on cover. And this topic was, gosh, we're going to cover things from how to capture Defcon. Well, I think that was a fun topic. We talked about what I want to talk about kernel development and what Gourry does, and I think you had some questions for me. And we have almost fresh coffee. I drank all of my coffee right beforehand, and it's very sad.
I also drank all of my coffee just beforehand.
And
I'm
yet,
at it. Yeah.
the thing I have to laugh at, I was disappointed because I chipped my mug, and then it made a comment of like, the cool thing is if you ever do get one, gosh, it sounds like such a goofy sponsorship, the Bluetooth coffee mug, but their warranty is fantastic on these mugs, and yeah, I don't know. We got into the conversation of coffee and how absolutely important it is. And it led me to, did you know Defcon at one point had a contest which was called Coffee Wars?
No. First of all, when was the last time I ran it? And second of all, what is it?
So I believe it predates me. This will circle back to why I even have heard of it. It predates me, I'm pretty sure, which is like Defcon, I think 14 was my first. And what it was it was a contest on who can make the best cup of coffee. And how I heard about it was when we got on the Leeds chat, we were talking about coffee and how I roast coffee. And I have I think 200 pounds right now in the house and some of my favorites. They're like, and Nikita was like, you should bring it back. And it seems like a logistical nightmare because when we had it at like Riviera or Alexis Park, it was, who cares about boiling water? Now the hotel's like, you have boiling water. Did you buy that water here? Are you paying us for electrical? But it was like, yeah, hackers embracing who can make the best cup of coffee.
It'd be like, who can make the best cup of coffee with a limited wattage?
That I feel like if you brought it back, you could do it as with portable limited wattage. You'd have to pull a device like the AeroPress, where there's world contests on the AeroPress and who can make a best cup of coffee. Have you heard of the world AeroPress before?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah. They're like, I love the story of it because it's the guy who made like the Arobi air disc was like, I'm going to make a coffee maker. But there's world contests on who can make one because there's so many methods, inverse, forward, 2 minutes, stir. There's whole apps dedicated to it too, which is really fun. But I think you would have to have like low hardware hacking, low wattage. You'd have like something AeroPress. And then, I don't know, maybe it's just like standard who can make the best.
Yeah, you have
cup.
We go with caveman bracket where you can't use any technology, all the way up to hardware hacking bracket where you make your own hardware of some kind to do this, and then somewhere in between, which is the in-between bracket, right? The real question I have is, who do you get to judge this, and how do you not end up with a person taking in a lethal amount of caffeine?
So the way so we went down the path of how could we do this without the hotel like having to get massively involved. And I believe if it's under 2 ounces, which is effectively a shot of espresso, if it's under 2 ounces, it doesn't count as like selling drinks and you can't sell them, you have to give them away. So I think you'd have to swap. I don't know. You could either do like the typical sipping thing where like if you've ever done coffee tasting, it is just as ridiculous as like a wine snobbery where you're smelling it, you're grabbing the spoon, and the way you avoid it in coffee tasting is you slurp it and then you legitimately spit it out. That is the only way you do it without just getting a giant caffeine like way too much. But no one's spitting it out at Defcon because like if you buy a cup of coffee at Defcon, it's like $15 for like a medium coffee. So I'm guessing this thing actually just boils down into a shameless excuse of distributing coffee to a bunch of hackers. But I think that's how you'd have to judge it. You'd have to have someone submit it, and then you have to taste it. But then the other question is like, who's bringing. You're gonna get coffee. Like, gosh, it gets really complicated. And this is why when we went down the path, you're gonna get people who bring in like the Cope Luwak. That's the Civet Cat one. Which, like, in and of itself, you don't want people bringing it, one, because it's not good. Like, it's not that good. It's low acidity and all of that. It's usually typically very, very, very stale coffee. But then they're like, on the back end of this, they're like force feeding Civet Cats in like cages because they now sell so much of it because of like movies. So like, there's that. There's like the elephant dung coffee. So like, I don't want to taste those. I've tasted those coffees. I have zero interest in doing it. So I almost think
novelties.
yeah, I almost feel like the best way to do it would be I would roast like 10, 15 pounds of coffee and ship it down. And then people could use that coffee to roast. And it would be like, who can roast the best cup of this one coffee? And then I don't have to like
20 pounds. I think you underestimate the popularity of a coffee-based contest. Although, I mean, like, if you have a limited number of contestants, then yeah, you could measure this out pretty easily.
I think, and I also think I'm the paranoid hat on. Like, I don't like the idea of like other people bringing stuff which other people are going to drink then.
Yeah, I think I was going to bring that up, and I would be concerned about that. Not because I actually think anyone's going to do it. Like, before anyone knows this thing is happening, no one has a chance to bring any of it. And I think that's good. I think you have to worry about it like the second or the third year where you just have one asshole, right?
Yeah.
Like,
well, it's not. It doesn't even have to be anything like nefarious and malicious, but someone going like, I'm going to do cayenne coffee or something like that. Like, Reaper coffee, where it's just like, I'm going to just do a Carolina Reaper or something, just something stupid where it's like, and your palate's blown and stuff like that.
Also, like, I think it's reasonable enough to say like, oh, this is a coffee brewing contest. We brought good beans who can make the best cup of coffee with this one bean is a totally good competition, because it's like, for folks that haven't done this before, I have my own espresso machine. Every cup of coffee I make tastes slightly different, which you wouldn't believe unless you know anything about espresso machines. Like, it is hard to dial in an espresso machine,
especially when your spouse is changing your grind size on a daily basis.
Well, especially when you're using multiple different types of beans, you can have I have my machine set up in a specific way, and it takes me like 5 cups of coffee to dial in the machine when we get a new set of beans in. And then because my wife is pregnant, she's drinking decaf right now, and decaf does not grind the same as regular coffee. And so she'll leave it on the decaf grind, and then I'll come in and grind the regular coffee beans. And as a result, like, the pressure gauge just goes off the chart because it's too finely ground. And I'm like, now it's a really bitter cup.
You know how you fix it? Two grinders. That's your only option.
Yeah.
So, either way, so like that, I would love to do. I mean, you could also do it like with specialty drinks too, where if someone wants to add, like, gosh, I just think of like Skyria's like habanero vodka or something like that. Like that sounds terrible in coffee.
Excuse me.
Yeah, she makes habanero vodka, and it's absolutely like, you can't. It's not it's not like, oh, you can drink it. Like, you get like less than a thimbleful, and it's really just liquid fire.
For Skyria, I would try it just because she's wonderful and I love her, but I don't know that I would willingly try that in any sane world. Unless Skyria was like, Gourry, could you please do this for me so I can watch you in pain? And I'll be like, just because it's you.
I mean, I think that is I think there's certain people who enjoy it, but I think that's half the enjoyment of it, is watching other people try it. Because it's not like, oh, how do you make it? You'd think, oh, there's this. No, it's like, grab fresh habaneros, soak them for like 6 weeks in vodka.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh gosh. So either way, that's Coffee Wars.
I was gonna say, if you follow that up with pineapple soaked in vodka for 6 weeks, we're in for a good time, buddy.
So I mean, that's Coffee Wars. I'd love to make it happen. It's just, I think the logistics of it I don't know are possible. I don't know if the logistics are even possible at Las Vegas Convention Center, Because like in and of
Yeah.
itself, you have to ship it. You have to do all of those things. I'm looking at, in being a security professional and being
Oh,
an expert at everyone else's job in
hey,
order to be
buddy.
considered adequate at yours. Hey, Ryan, welcome.
This is a buddy from my past. We need to hang
Really?
out, man. Yeah. We'll leave it
Wait,
we'll leave it there for now. But yeah.
so that's Coffee Wars. I would love to do it, but I think like we're gonna have a logistical nightmare in and of itself just capturing Defcon. So I do want to get to like diving into kernel development and things like that. But I think just capturing Defcon in and of itself is a Herculean. Like we've Las Vegas Convention Center
Yeah.
added a whole slew of problems, which I think we have solutions for a little bit this
Well,
year.
in some ways it added problems. In other ways it made things so much easier because instead of going to 4 fucking hotels, it's now all in one place.
Yeah, but like
Now I'm gonna
you,
respond to Ryan here for a second. I gotta give him this. So he said, being a security professional is being an expert at everyone else's job in order to be considered adequate at yours, or in other words, being a bit of a connoisseur of technology, if you will, just to be considered adequate.
yeah, it's what's interesting. Go on.
But no, I'm going to tie that back into DEF CON, which is kind of how DEF CON is, right? Like the problem with trying to capture DEF CON is even if you could get to it all, like you show up at the blue team village not having ever done blue team stuff, and who do you talk to? What do you talk about? It's such a different area of in some senses it's such a different area of interest than maybe what I do every day. And so can I do it justice in capturing DEF CON? I think that's why like video and photo needs a wide range of people to be able to capture all of those different jobs even within our space.
But let's say this. I feel like I can communicate with blue team and red team in a lot of these. How do you make it interesting on a video? Because a lot of this topic, like take blue teaming, take the most interesting concepts of blue teaming, put them in a YouTube video, which goes an hour long. It's typically incredibly dry, incredibly like, here is how detection works. So it's either really high level, like, here is how you detect bad actors on a network, or it's here is how I create a new rule within my sim to be able to find this attack. How do you make that interesting on video?
Well, we've talked about this before, right? Like, so it's like people who ask you like, oh, what's it like to what's the day in the life of a hacker? And the answer is staring at a screen, occasionally going, damn it, I don't understand. What is this guy even try? What is this code? I don't understand. What is all of this stuff? And then you go, oh, I get it. And then you click a button and there's a shell. And like explaining that process to people is just like, explain your job poorly. As a kernel developer, I'm a professional text editor. It's what I do. I edit text files for a living.
What was the Chat GPT one for me? I get paid to have wild ideas, convince people they're safe, and occasionally yell, what if we use AI for that?
That sounds literally you just did that too. You're like, I don't have time to think about what my job is to be described poorly. I'm going to ask ChatGPT.
I mean, let's jump into ChatGPT because you had made a comment before stream, which was you're not really using it for that much anymore.
No, and I think part of that is because some of the work I've been doing recently is in a space where there's nothing comparable to it. I mean, there's plenty. I do kernel development, so there's plenty of kernel code in existence, right? So, like, if you want the rough structure of something, if you want a sysfs file, so like, I'll show you, for example. I'll pull up a terminal here. If I want to go into like, I don't know, sysbus, let's go into C groups. It's under C groups. A C group is a container. So if you ever use like Kubernetes or I don't know, any kind of
Docker,
container software,
Podman,
you're
all of it.
basically building up on top of C groups. Actually, I think it's under kernel. It's under kernel C group. Nope, I had it in the right spot. Just showing my inability to do my job effectively here. So C groups, like there's this whole interface that you can communicate with that basically says like, oh, I want to limit this container to how much memory it uses. I want to, change the swappiness, aka like how aggressively will I start reclaiming memory on the system before I start sending it to swap. And I don't want to get into swap, but all these interfaces. Oh man, how did I start this? I lost my train of thought. No.
You're talking about ChatGPT, and you'd build the structure of things.
Oh, so if you want to build the structure, like if you just want to add another thing in here, that's easy. Like, and that's like a 10-minute job, and it's like a 2-minute job with ChatGPT maybe, or any other AI model. But I don't care about this entry. I care about what happens when I write to that entry, right? Like, oh, soft limited bytes. What does this do? And the thing about doing like systems level development is that typically what you're doing for any one of these interfaces is like relatively novel. Some things are not that novel, but a lot of these things are novel. And so I think I actually have the code. So what ends up happening is if we're in the memory management model or module and you want to implement one of those sysfs interfaces, we'll just go into one that I actually know about. Actually, it'll be in mem policy. If you want to implement a sysfs interface to this, like this is all code that I wrote.
Wait, you're using Vim? I thought Nano was the far superior text editor.
I only use Vim because I'm a dinosaur. So, so like this is all code that I wrote, and this is all of the stuff that produces some of that sysfs infrastructure. But like what it actually does has no other comparison in the kernel. And so if you try to vibe code this out, it doesn't know what to like. The ChatGPT hasn't been trained on this stuff. So it's like it'll give you an idea of kind of what you wanted to do, but I've talked about this before. It becomes a job of like trying to play the peanut butter sandwich game with a kid. I use Kate because I haven't used Kate. Kate's a new one for me. Have you, Silk? Do you know what Kate is?
I feel like I've used it once before. I think isn't it a graphical interface for something? It kind of looks like Nano, but it's on it doesn't run in a terminal. I don't think. It's been a long time. I've been misremembering something.
Kind of looks like VS Code. Just taking a quick look at it. But yeah, so there isn't really like there are plenty of comparable infrastructure. There's a lot of comparable infrastructure, right? So like if I want to build up those sysfs interfaces, or if I want to write a syscall, define. Is there anything? Yeah, if I want to write a new syscall, which is like if you call mmap's a syscall that lets you open a file and gives you a direct addressing interface to that file. If I want to write a new syscall, it'll produce the structure of that, no problem. But once you do that like twice, you know how to do it, and it's like a 2-minute job, right? Actually writing the freaking syscall, this syscall is gonna cross like multiple files, and then it's going to have a bunch of interactions with the architecture code and maybe even some driver code and all this other stuff, that trying to get ChatGPT or any other AI model to vibe code it out is not a thing. Now, that said, if I were starting a brand new kernel, maybe I could vibe code that. I don't know. I don't know that I would want to attempt that. I think it would break horribly.
Can someone make a Vibe OS? Just the entire operating system has been vibe coded. I mean, though, I'd argue this is not the proper way. If you want me to reshare, I can. I'd argue the best uses in AI, high level, I believe, are going from unstructured data to structured data. And you ask yourself, is this a problem of, am I moving unstructured data to structure. This is why I think like ChatGPT replaces lawyers in some ways. Again, you still need a lawyer and all of that. Like, but a lawyer's job is to grab books and documents of case law, of previous case law, to find precedent, to find obscure laws and a bunch of unstructured information, and move it into a brief and move it into structure. When you're looking at this,
I will push back on that and to say that there is a human element that really like can't be replaced there, because there's a lot of subjectivity. And I would say even in our space.
Yeah, said for everything. No, I'm not saying someone could get replaced. I'm not saying lawyers can get replaced. I'm just saying like a big chunk of their job is to grab unstructured data and move structure. It can assist them. Even like when it goes to like, it's going to replace developers, like it can replace a lot of coding. It can't replace, it might be replace, we'll say coders. It's not going to replace a developer. Coder is, here is how I write the thing. Developer is, what is the best way to structure and write this thing and organize it along the way. Like,
I get uncomfortable when we talk. I just don't think that that's a useful differentiation between classes of software engineer.
Fair. My point is unstructured data to structured data. This is not a problem of unstructured data to structured data. This is why it thrives at research papers, like where people are cheating at home. I don't know if it's considered cheating, to be honest, but like this is why you can write a research paper in 4 seconds, because what you're expected to do in school is regurgitate information. You're not supposed to come up with the original thought. You're supposed to regurgitate information, unstructured data to structured data. So I would argue this creating a new syscall is not unstructured to structured data, and that's why it struggles with it.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess like I don't disagree with that. And like I said, like I have relegated its use at this point to, oh, I need to write a test in Bash and I can't be bothered to actually learn Bash syntax ever in 15 years that I've been working. If you ask me to write a while loop, I will ask ChatGPT to write the while loop because I cannot be bothered.
I mean, I did like a download. Well, I mean, that is like, again, unstructured to structured. Like it has been trained on, here is how to do a download and execute. Like I need to do one of those one-liners recently. Here's how to do it. Heck, it can do the research on here are ways that, here's white papers that have been written on how to detect those things. Here's how to write code on how to bypass those things. Like, so here, I'm going to start us with a topic, which is,
sure.
I was talking to Garrett, who is the author of Hacker Mindset, and we had a conversation on this. He was talking about AI and the use of it, and he quoted, there is a book, I have not read it, called We Are the Ants by Sean Hutchinson. Young adult novel blends sci-fi elements with deep. I haven't read it, but he used the phrase "We are the ants," which is anyone who is not making use. Again, this is a bold statement. I'm not sure if I agree with it or not. Anyone who is not using AI, large language models, to expand their capabilities, you are the ants. Like that is what he means by that, is you are being left behind. It is like going through life without Google, without going through life without Wikipedia, without using the internet. You are the Neanderthal if you're not adopting this technology. That is the strong statement he's making.
And that's a good point. And I don't know that I disagree with that. And even Ryan had a statement on this as well. He said, I like Paul Merlucky's definition of how to apply AI. It's a force multiplier in a similar to how Johnny Long figured out how to use Google to hack. For sure, it's a tool, right? And it's a tool, and in my profession, I'll be honest, like I've started writing, I mean, I could probably show this. I started writing a book more or less on how the technology I work with gets consumed by Linux, or like how it works on Linux. And I started it in probably the worst way possible, which was a series of emails serially on the Linux kernel mailing list. And I ended up writing like 12,000 lines of, not 12,000, 12,000 words, and then trying to produce a structure in a way that I can toss this into the Linux kernel docs, essentially. And there is a point at which I needed to figure out the best way to structure the information to present it to people. But once I figure out that structure, I will probably just drop all of my notes in and then tell ChatGPT or whatever AI model to just fill it out. But figuring out the structure was a nightmare.
So, Ryan, you had said, yeah, I agree. 20 years ago, I didn't believe in SIM. Now you wouldn't do blue teaming without one. SIM is the hammer, AI is the knife, etc. It's funny. I do think you're going to go through iterations. You're going to go through like, oh, AI is useless, AI is helpful, but like I've gotten to the point now where it is. I truly believe deep in my soul that is correct. If you are not leveraging it, you have late adopters. Like our parents still used Encyclopedia Britannica, and the teachers told us that's what you're supposed to use while we were using Wikipedia and Google. Like,
and then you learn later that the guy who wrote the entry on elephants was just a guy who just really liked elephants a bit too much. And not actually a scientist. Which was like this is not entirely a lie. They just went out and found random people that liked something a little too much and got them to fill out portions of it. Sometimes it was actually scientific based, but other times it was just like, whoever they could find that was willing to write a page.
I really don't want to expand on that because the first thing that jumped into my head was balloon animals, and someone just very excited about balloon animals. So like, I'm going to write the Wikipedia on that. That is the one I'm putting my name on. I want the balloon animal. Oh gosh.
Well, no, this is a good example. Like, remember when I was a kid, they told us not to use Wikipedia because it wasn't a reliable source of information. And then now it's like, no, you could use Wikipedia. It's pretty reliable.
Hold on. I would argue that even back then, if it's just someone passionate about it, because like, let's argue, where was the prime research coming from? A doctor who was, I don't know why I just did this for doctor, like it's a made up thing, but it was a doctor who was passionate about it, who wrote research on it, got published, and all of a sudden now it's a valid source. Like the barometer for truthiness was whether or not it was published in a reliable source.
That's true. Yeah. So Wikipedia broke the shit out of that, but
yeah, but that was the thing, is a reliable source is just someone who is learned on the topic. So, but going back to my point is I do believe any large language model, and again, insert your flavor of the week, ChatGPT, Gemini, Llama, whatever, run your own DeepSeek or whatever it's called. Like you will be left behind. In very specific industries. There's some industries probably not, but in general life, I would say, if you are not leveraging it, it is a massive force multiplier, and I do think you are losing out. I do think within our lifetime, I actually do believe this. I hope it's not vibe coded. I think it'll be partially vibe coded. There will be an individual self-made billionaire who is a one-person company who is leveraging AI in a way it hasn't been seen before.
I think that's inevitable to an extent. But I'll toss this out because Ryan's given us a lot of good stuff to talk about. He goes, you need a human that knows the difference between being qualified to operate a tool and leveraging qualifications of a tool to create outcomes. See, this is the danger. And I've seen someone explain this. The best I've seen before is AI's creating this gap. And do you want to share a screen real quick? Because I'm going to draw a diagram here. The best explanation I've seen with some of the danger here is that like AI is really great if you're trying to bridge a gap and like you're trying to accomplish something, and your efficiency goes down over time because you're learning new things, but then you figure it out and it goes up, and then you're coasting for a while, and then you run up against a tool that you just don't know how to use. And so your efficiency goes down while you learn that tool. And then you have this really steep curve that you have to go across learning this new thing, and then you become efficient again, right? And like, this is where we were before. And if your base level of understanding is like on the overall technology that you're working on is pretty like level across the board until you hit this gap of knowledge, then you can deploy AI very, very efficiently and very rapidly. The danger we're in now is when you have vibe coders whose general, like, they're starting off a new project and their general ability is down here at the bottom, and they immediately hit a gap in knowledge. Hold on, we're gonna get there, I swear. They immediately hit a gap
you're drawing
in
by the way?
Excalidraw.
Okay.
They immediately hit a gap in knowledge, and that valley of gap in knowledge is very big. And then they use AI to just bridge this gap immediately, which would be quote unquote vibe coding. And so they get to just go from point A to point B very rapidly. And the issue I see with this is that this is a very large area for someone to have to debug when it breaks. Right? Or just reason about whether or not it is a good system. And so you could call me like there's an old apocryphal quote by Plato or whatever. It was Plato or something. It's like, oh, the written word will destroy the ability of the human brain to retain knowledge. And, it became like the greatest force multiplier in the history of anything. Right. But this like undermines what it is to be a junior engineer, because I'm going to quote somebody else. Life is not supposed to be easy. And when it is too easy, we create scenarios like this. And what happens 20 years from now when most of the code is written this way? Will AI, and it's an open question. I'm not saying we're going to run off a cliff. I'm saying the only answer here is AI has to be so good that this never happens in order for us to not be dodging cliffs in every corner. How do you make a rocket fly into space off of this type of design cycle? Would you ever personally ride that rocket?
I'm going to ask questions, and we're going to see where it goes. You are an expert, top tier, the best in the world. I'm kind of leading to this on Linux kernel memory.
I would disagree with that, but let's
no. I'm that's my question. You're saying no. Okay.
No,
so
absolutely not.
Within any vertical, there's always more to know.
Yeah.
Or it has to expand a little bit. So for technology, is anyone an expert in anything? Like, we'll say, maybe not expert. At what point? At a certain point, junior developer has learned enough, we'll say, using your diagram, to get to the other side. They're on that level. They've learned that much. What is the barometer for that? What is the measurement for that? Where you go, okay, I have bequeathed onto you that you have learned so much that you have made it to the other side, and you are not allowed, not gatekeeping, but like, I would now trust your code. Because I can go back on like things like shell shock or the pseudo vulnerability. We just put enough A's in, and it just like goes, okay, you are now root. Like, those things existed prior to vibe coding. So I asked the question, how is this any worse than what has been previously done?
Good question. Good question. I have to take a moment to think about this. I hesitate to say that it's worse because it's so new. But the thing that is different is the speed at which new things are deployed and the general level of understanding individuals have of those things when they are deployed. Now, that said, when you do, at scale development, like if you have like 10,000 developers that are all working on different things, the idea that you're going to have any one developer review code for any other developer who are fundamentally in different domains is kind of a farce. And like it's a big open secret, right? It's kind of a farce. Like that's why the general saying is your code is only as good as your tests. But if you have like this is the feedback loop that I see happening, right? If you have this scenario and then our answer for this gap is okay, let's go produce tests that we do understand and have this monitor these gaps. What happens when the people who write the tests vibe code this as well?
Well, or I'll argue.
Right. And so like my my answer here is kind of obtuse, but it's basically there is no ending point to this because humans are lazy and efficient by our nature. And so any logical thing that you try to put in front of like or any logical structure you try and put in front of controlling this in any way, I guess, which maybe is the wrong way to think about this, but like any way you try that. So I'm going to try and answer your question very much more explicitly. Is this worse? I don't know that I would go so far as to say that bluntly. I will say it's faster and it's more likely to break. And we all know this because we've all used the tools. It gets it wrong a lot. And the open question is whether or not it will get better enough to allow this scenario to be okay and, to control the output with good tests, essentially, that we can reason about.
This is where I started to hit a very funny gap, and it highlights exactly what Ryan said, which is it can build unit tests. So this is how vibe coding works. Like it builds the unit tests, it builds the code, it runs it. Because it sucks at it, it's going to constantly break until it passes your unit test. Let's make the problem much easier.
You can unshare.
Let's make the problem much easier. If I told you, and maybe you know this classical thing, I think you might have even been the one to introduce it to me. If I said I want you to write a function which is 99.9% accurate as it approaches affinity to determine if a number is a prime number, what is the quickest way to write that function? And it has to be fast. I need it to be 99.99 accurate as it approaches infinity to determine if a number is prime number. And your primary goal of it is to make it a fast function.
Yeah, you just return false.
You return false. Like, I don't have to care about it because as I approach affinity, I'm going to be 99% accurate. So I just return false. So AI, I think, would come up with that solution. And that's the type of solution which should both terrify us, but go, nope, that's because I didn't build the unit test correctly, or I didn't ask it to do something correctly. And this is where it's going to require someone with a brain to drive it. This is the same thing with your tests. I think we're going to become more evolved in how we write tests beyond unit tests. Like one of the biggest ones that it's not writing is a lot of the negative tests. Like I always call them security tests. Here, I want to build this thing. When it creates it, here's all the things that it should match. But now go make more unit tests which say, when I try and access this data from this other session, it should fail. Go access the database directly after this spins up and it should fail. So to test all the rules. And I think what we're talking about is it just becomes one more layer obfuscated or extracted. Abstracted. Where we start going like when C# came around, they're like, there's going to be so many vulnerabilities because now you don't have to deal with assembly. And now your next layer was like, oh, we're you won't have to do this. Now we're not even seeing the code. We're just saying here is the thing, and you don't have to see anything. It's just another layer.
So fewer vulnerabilities because there's no pointers.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
And to an extent, a class of vulnerability has been wiped out. But then you find out that a human made it, so a human could break it. So maybe this is the answer: is stop letting humans make code and just let the AI vibe code itself.
I mean, I think the one of the reasons, though, I believe in the I don't know, it's we are the ants. Anyone who doesn't use it is going to get crushed. I think that's kind of like the phrase, because I've never even heard the phrase before. For all I know, I'm using it wrong. But if you're not using it, you are going to get crushed, because I think the hardest thing. I mean, when I look at my business, when I look at my company, when I look at hiring the people I've hired, when I look at starting new projects, the hardest thing, and I don't think this is just me, I think this is universal, is inertia. Is starting whatever it is. I work out, by the way.
Yeah.
I started working out. I'm not sure if I shared that. The hardest
get
thing
an
was,
AI to do that for you.
but it was getting started. It sucked. And then getting sick and then starting it back up was hard. Picking up a new project. And I think that's one of the things you'd be able to do is, like, normally when you start a new project, you're below an hour just getting the framework set up. If it's whatever it is, if it's Go, if it's let's say it's a Node.js project and you're doing it in TypeScript, it's like getting your TS config set up, getting your base packages, getting a linter in there, getting ESLint set up, like all of this crap. It's a big leap where now I can, like, not vibe code it necessarily, but like, boop, give me my one-liner to this, and it gets me moving and it overcomes that initial hurdle. I think that's why we're going so fast.
So I'll give you an example. I'll give you an explicit example if you want to share it out.
Yeah.
So this is the documentation I have been writing for the stuff that I've been working on, right? Like, most of my effort over the past 2 weeks has been implementing the structure of all of this, right? And then you can see there's all these to-dos that I haven't filled out. And probably I could have been smarter about how I used various chat bots to build the structure of this. But also there's a human element to this, of like how you present information in a very human digestible way, and then also fitting it into an existing structure that is difficult. But then the contents of this, like, no, I have to write it to an extent because most of this information just doesn't exist otherwise. So like AI will just make shit up.
Yeah. I mean, that's
just an example, but yeah, like that like starting piece, just getting this shit set up was like half the battle.
It's a Herculean effort getting anything new started. It doesn't matter what it is. And I think that's where it's a little bit of a superpower, is it gets you over the hurdle to be able to start. Ryan, I'm reading your comments and it's like you're 100% right on every piece of this, it looks like. I would rather vibe code AI as a non-developer to cut through the blockers to create, example, an AI agent that does file analysis and extracts CTI, the whole step, and IR process can be automated. Yeah, I think it's interesting because I almost attribute, not in the same way of, we'll say, blockchain, where it's like there was a solution created and then we went off looking for a problem. With large language models, we created a solution and we knew some of the problems it solved, but I think most of the problems we haven't found. And again, we have a tool, we have a solution, but we're in search of a problem a little bit.
Yeah. I obviously I'm taking it to the extreme to an extent, but I think I fundamentally would put it down to, at what point do you disallow it? And so my question would be, like, at what point would you feel comfortable getting on a vibe coded rocket that's sending you to the moon? I don't think I would ever feel comfortable. But then again, I'm not sure I would feel comfortable with a human built rocket.
That's the thing is, I go, how much, at a certain point, how much is it any different? And I think it almost comes down to that unit tests. Like, has it been tested hasn't been tested to that extent. But it is
Well, just like,
terrifying.
well, no, part of it is like just knowing like the human mistakes. Like, was it the Challenger or the one before that? That the issue was that there was one small component of the rocket that was built in metric, and the rest of it was all imperial. And they mucked up like an O-ring size, and that caused a critical failure, right? And just knowing the like small mistakes that AI can sprinkle in everywhere
Yeah, that's
just terrifies me, you know?
I think it like I've been trying it in the thing I've been building, and the thing I've been building is effectively it ends up being a C2 system. Again, there's more to it, but I know I'm doing things. I know some of the things and tactics I'm using haven't been done before. Like creating peer-to-peer connections and throwing data connection, which isn't supposed to be done. Like it's made for video and audio, and I'm like, we can send this stuff over it too. We can do TCP over UDP. We can wrap it enough times and make it look this way. We can do DNS reverse, like all of that stuff's been done before, but now doing it over a peer connection has been weird. The thing which drives me nuts is I'm dealing with a language I'm not great at, which is Golang. I'm learning more of it, but I'm also learning like the nuanced pieces where there hasn't been a lot of development on it. Like where there's a third-party library which kind of does what I'm doing from like 8 years ago. That's the part where ChatGPT will be like, oh yeah, this is totally how to do it. And it either uses, like, I think the fundamental problem with coding is this, or with coding with AI, is if you look at things like write this thing, unstructured to structured, it works really well. I think one of the biggest reasons why coding has failed why it sucks so much is most of the code online it's been trained off of, or a lot of it, is broken because people are posting, here is my broken code. How do I fix? Like Stack Overflow. Most of it was broken code. And then it was like a fix that was then later revised with frameworks. So, and then look at like JavaScript frameworks. There's like a new one every 4 days. The moment you cross over those frameworks, all the coding is just poor. So I think the next phase is going to be like, let's build the unit tests and better testing engines for it. I mean, that's effectively what the newest versions do.
All right, I'm going to put my computer science hat on. Unit tests only go so far, because when you take two libraries that have been really well unit tested and put them together, you get emergent properties, because you now have interactions between things that were never intended from the beginning. Right. And you can't, and given infinite resources, you can do infinite testing, but we won't do infinite testing. So you're never going to find all the boundary conditions. And one of the deep truths of, the computer science realm is that you can't solve the halting problem, right? It's literally an undecidable problem. If you could do that, then 0 equals 1 and the universe ceases making sense, right? So like there are limitations to this.
So I almost wonder if we are going to expound on Kubernetes, Docker to the point of so we have this idea of like untrusted software. Like this is untrusted, like, or untrusted input. So big thing in like web security is anything coming from the user is completely untrusted. It either needs to be checked for integrity or confidentiality. Like it's untrusted. It needs to be sanitized and restructured. Even if I gave them the data from the backend, I have to assume it's being changed unless I have some sort of backend checksum on it. I'm wondering at what point we get to the point where like this exists in some ways right now, like Nessus modules or Metasploit modules, which they never fix that problem. But point being is that there is containerization of vibe code. We're going to call it that. There is the containerization of vibe code to the extent that it is this data is allowed in, this data is allowed out, and then there's vibe code, where it's legitimately, it's not just like you're going to chunk out your software in a point where it's all containerized. Was it, there's a piece of software, was it Rancher? Yeah, okay. It's called Rancher, and it's kind of like a Kubernetes stack where it runs that and monitors it. And you can run the entire thing. inside a containerization. So you have Docker inside your Docker running Docker to run your Docker containers. Like,
Yeah.
that is how it works. And
Yep.
I'm wondering at what point that is the way you have to treat vibe code. You just go, okay, can't handle anything critical.
Yeah, I mean, I think generally that's how code is handled today, especially just like untrusted, unknown code is largely isolated. Now, I'm going to put my systems engineer hat on. I would not trust Docker. It would have to be in a VM, right? And then with extra isolation tools on top of that. And that's simply because I know how VMs and containers are written, and Docker a Docker container is not sufficient isolation to provide security at that level.
This like goes back to you deal with memory, which is a terrifying problem. Like, this goes back to the
it's
old
actually
exploits.
not like I'm gonna push back on that. Everyone goes, this is the deep magic, and meanwhile I'm like, all right, if else statements.
No, I mean, like, the problem that existed with AWS Lambda, which I found hilarious, which is, so like, it came out, I think it was like after Heartbleed, effectively, where everyone's like, oh wait, you can dump other sections of memory. And then it was like, oh, I can spin up an AWS Lambda script, which is really, really, really small, and all it does is dump memory. So if I put it up there and I'm running that in someone else's instance, effectively, I can dump the memory from theirs. And all of a sudden, I think it was Stripe which got hit with this, because they were running in AWS, and someone spun up thousands and thousands of spot instances, which you're using someone else's instance at that point. It's like, oh, okay, I'll just dump and eat all of their memory.
Yep.
This is where AI starts to terrify me, by the way, because that's unstructured data, and that was the hardest part of the attack, was making sense of it. So you just go, give me all this memory.
Oh yeah,
and then throw it over here, and now go make sense of that.
I mean, in some senses that terrifies me. In other senses, I'm like, now that is a neat use of AI. Is like, here's a giant memory blob. Go do the analysis for me and tell me like starting the analysis of an unknown blob of memory is a little difficult, and there's tools out there to help you do this. But like, I don't know. I've always called it intern GPT. Go make the intern do it. And tell me if they find anything interesting.
Look at it. Gosh, I feel like I'm giving up a secret, but like, look at Hack Fortress. You remember that story from Defcon?
Gosh. Yeah, I don't know if we should talk about that, because I kind of want to do that this year.
But it was like legitimately, again, there's like, 6 people. You guys are our friends. You're not going to tell anyone. We trust you implicitly. It was the Hack Fortress was legitimately, it's for most CTFs. For most CTFs, they're all like, hide the flag. You know they're vulnerable, so you know there's a way of finding it. And the agent-based CTF, the agent-based LLMs are remarkably good at solving most CTF challenges. Now, hard challenges, like long challenge, ones that are going to take a few hours to solve, they're not great at. But like, Hack Fortress is made to be like almost like micro tests. For those who don't know, you have a hacking team, you have a gaming team. They're playing Team Fortress 2. The hacking team is solving like a Jeopardy style CTF challenges. The better the CTF team does, they get like hints. They solve stuff. They can give advantages to their team, like automatic critical hits, slap the other team. They get locked out from the point. There's a whole story. They do it. The team which runs it, absolutely incredible. But all of their challenges are meant to be solved in under a minute. Like, if you know what you're doing, you should be able to solve it under a minute. Spin up Binary Ninja, spin up Burp, Peros, whatever. But ChatGPT was remarkably, like, I think it was like, of the 12 flags that were solved, 11 of them I solved with ChatGPT.
I mean, we did that with more than one
yes, we did
as well. There were multiple contests where we well, not just that, like, we went through a couple different ones, and we were just like, I wonder how, and it was just like copy paste, and I was like, oh, I wonder if the design of games at Defcon is now broken because of this. Although I will say, it was remarkably bad at the time at some levels of trivia.
Yeah,
right?
it was.
Like you spent like 5 minutes working on something and then you read the question out loud and I went, oh, it's this. Like I've
Yeah,
seen
well,
that movie.
or it was like veneer cipher. I made the assumption it would actually be able to run it, where it's like, okay, fine, I'll just copy and paste it over at decode or something like
Yeah.
that. So like there are a few, but yeah, there was the one where it was like, well, it was like your Austin Powers one where what was it? It was Mr. Bigglesworth was what actor?
Oh, dude. Yeah, no. What is the cat's name on Austin Powers? My wife and I went to go see Austin Powers the other day in a theater. They were playing it, and I was like, "This is fantastic! I haven't seen this." And first of all, the movie is ridiculous. It still holds up today.
I
But
feel like it shouldn't have aged well.
so there's a bathroom scene where Austin Powers gets attacked while he's on the toilet. And like it's one of the assassins that's like trying to choke him out, but there's a bathroom attendant. And you only see him for like maybe 2 or 3 seconds because Austin Powers gets really uncomfortable. He's like, oh, bathroom attendant, because bathroom attendants.
Yeah.
But the bathroom attendant, like in the moment that I saw him, I was like, that guy looked like Christopher Lloyd. Who is that guy? So I typed in Christopher Lloyd, Austin Powers.
Doctor in Back to the Future.
Yeah, the Doctor in Back to the Future. So I typed in Christopher Lloyd, Austin Powers bathroom scene into Google, and Google's AI answer was Christopher Lloyd has a prominent role in the Austin Powers movie franchise, playing the evil villain Dr. Evil's loyal and often clueless sidekick, Mr. Bigglesworth the cat. And I was like, hold up, this is so absurdly wrong, but now I think we need to make an Austin Powers movie where Christopher Lloyd plays Mr. Bigglesworth. Like, congratulations. This is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. And now I can't get the image of Christopher Lloyd dressed up like a cat out of my head for weeks.
I think the step everyone had to overcome, this is such a weirdly bold statement, that everyone needed to overcome was the understanding that ChatGPT can be wrong. Like, I think when I've been dealing with like my parents who I'm trying to get to use it and stuff like that, because it's great for research, and heck, I used it for, we're building a house. So I wanted to compare 2 brand name of windows, and I just gave it to deep research, and it like, here we pulled like 30 different sources. But I think early on, everyone treated it like a Wikipedia entry. Like it was using data and all it was doing was just pulling it up.
Yeah.
Not understanding fundamentally how it works, where it used tokenization, it's guessing the next word. They thought it was like a better Google search engine, but it said it with such confidence. Like you would ask it a question, like how many R's are in strawberry? It's like 15, 100% 15.
There are no R's in strawberry.
But it would say it with such confidence. And I think we're hitting, well, that example looks so obviously stupid. It does it with code, and somehow we're not applying the same, like, ChatGPT, you're an idiot. Like, you're an idiot. To the code going, why isn't this working? Come on. It says it should be working. It says it's compiled. We go, nope. There's more than 2 R's in strawberry.
I like what Jon Stewart said. Like, I don't know if are prompt engineers still a thing? Is that still a thing that people
prompt
hire?
Engineer? Oh, I'm sure they do.
A prompt engineer, yeah.
Prompt
so
engineer.
like when the whole thing blew open, was it last year or I guess 2 years ago? Whatever. When the whole market blew open on it, Jon Stewart had a bit on the Daily Show about the fact that they were now calling them prompt engineers, and his response was, "Your job title is just asks questions guy." Because it's like, oh, make me a thing. ChatGPT, are you sure about that? Like that's your job, is to just basically go, are you sure about that?
Look
are
at
you
this.
sure about that?
So this is let's see if I can drag these across. I might not be able to. But like when we were making thumbnails, like here's like let me download them. I think I might be able to save image. Save image. I don't know where this is saving it to. Yep. All right. Save one. Save. Yes, it already exists. Sure. Okay. Replace whatever that other image is.
There you go.
Oh, you got it? Yeah. So like I want to share out the how to capture Defcon, because that was the original one. The one where it's kind of like spring, Like, let's share out that one if you have it.
Oh, I don't have that one.
All right, here, I can finish saving these then. Two.
Oh, here, I got you.
Oh, here we go. All right, cool. I'm gonna share it out.
I could just open it up. There you go. I got you.
You got it? All right,
wait. That's our Discord. No.
Yeah.
Why did it do that?
All right, here, you got it.
There you go.
All right, so you share that one. I'm going to share out the other one, which was...
Yeah.
I should be able to do this. All right, here we go. Preview. Go to preview mode. Go ahead, capture that. All right. Publish.
I got them all.
So this one, I gave it this image. Oh, you got it? Here, I can flip on over.
Yep.
All right. I gave it this image. And I was like, how to capture Defcon. And I gave it some idea, and it came up with, it gave this. And I then have started asking it, going, how can I make this better? Then go do that thing. And this has become the constant pattern, which was like, how can I make this prompt better? And then it gives me an answer, and then you say, yeah, go do that thing. Ultimately, that's how agents are working right now. How can I make this thing better? Go do this. But the difference between those images are really stark contrast. Like going from that, and then it has the context of, oh, I can make this better by making a Rube Goldberg machine, and it knows how to prompt itself. I think that's where I was super impressed with it lately. The image generation is great.
First of all, I like ping detector, and also it's supposed to say Defcon bait. It's great.
Oh, it's so awesome. Decon. Oh gosh, decon bait.
Yeah.
But they've gotten better
on this.
And for nothing else than the fact that we get to now make thumbnails 5 minutes before we go. I just realized I don't know if I ever fixed this. Oh gosh, I've been sitting on the wrong screen. I think we're looking at each other now. Hopefully that worked. Oh, here we go. Can I share that out? Vonnegut. Perfect. I have no idea. Was that actually looking right on your end? Because I just realized I've still been in preview mode.
It was fine.
All right. Either way, we went all over the place. I got nothing else. What's your thoughts? What's your final thoughts here?
I don't know. What are my final thoughts? Do I have final thoughts? I think Ryan's right. Like I didn't say this earlier, but he did make a comment about it makes some things more accessible to junior engineers and helps you bridge a bunch of knowledge gaps very quickly. I used it like that very early on when I broke into a new area. And I used it, to be honest, I used it pretty heavily when I was really breaking into making changes in the kernel, especially like with standard stuff like how do I make a sysfs entry? Like this has been done thousands of times. Yeah, that's a perfect example of that. And that helps you build the interface to these things, which is to some extent the hardest part. Like you're like, oh, you work with memory management. That's hard. I'm like, not really. Like the hard part is socializing the changes enough to get people to agree that they should be changed because you're changing a fundamental component of a piece of software. The kernel runs everything, right? The hard part is really building the interfaces in a way that people will look at them and go, yes, that's a good interface because I can consume that and it makes sense. So you kind of have to, the job is more human than people give it credit for. But he said with new people coming in, bridging those gaps and just, I used to call it a cognitive assistance device or your own private intern. And I still stand by that. I think you can use it like your own private intern as long as you treat it like an intern and go, are you sure about that? Right? Like don't trust the results. Do not get on an AI generated rocket to the moon. I would not do that.
I think some of the funniest ways I've seen recently to try and instead of asking, are you sure about that? You end your prompt with this is life or death. And then it really takes a minute to think about it. That's the one I've started doing with some of the coding. Like this is a life or death scenario. You cannot get this wrong. And all of a sudden it now researches like way more websites to confirm it. There's been some
I wonder
really
what the
funny
power
hacks with it.
consumption of a prompt like that is comparative to a quote unquote normal prompt. Like like your average GPT query costs like, I don't know, we'll say 5 cents or something like that. But if you say this is life or death, does the power consumption turn out to be like $1? Like,
I think for me, the like my job ultimately, because my company and whatnot, like one of my primary jobs is solving problems. Like, ooh, yeah, solving problems. It's like a client has, or we come up with something. Example, like during a penetration test, someone started finding some open shares that had private data on them. And because they're on the internal network, there's not great tools. There's good tools within Office 365 called Purview to find like sensitive data, but there's not great tools on the inside. So we're like, well, let's go build one. Let's see if something exists. Nothing really exists which did exactly how we wanted to do it, because there were like specialty files. It wasn't like SAP or something like that. So the idea was like, okay, let's build a tool to solve this. Like, how do we do that? And it's like, okay, well, my job is to get this thing started, and it has a bunch of my job is being able to overcome that initial inertia. This lets me do it. I wanted to move this agent I created from, weirdly enough, I don't know why I started it in TypeScript, because I'm a nut, and why would you not build like desktop software in Node? So I ended up converting it over to Go, but I hadn't used Go before. But it was like, okay, here's my project. Go build it in Go. And it got me started. So I think for me, the entire concept that this overcomes baseline inertia is huge. Like, I think that is the thing which moves it from a intern to a critical part of my job. Or at least not critical, but like a big leg up. With that, though, thanks for watching, and hack on.